Some stories don't disappear, they are buried, not because they are false, but because they are uncomfortable. They involve power, influence, and people who were never supposed to be questioned. The Jeffrey Epstein files are not about gossip, they are about silence and why some truths take years to surface. Before we talk about the files, it's important to understand who Jeffrey Epstein actually was. Not who the internet says he was, but who the records show he became. Epstein was not a public figure, he wasn't an elected official, he didn't run a major corporation. Yet he had access that most people never do. Over time, he positioned himself as a financier, someone who managed wealth quietly away from public scrutiny. That access opened doors, private flights, exclusive properties, and social circles where influence mattered more than visibility. What's most disturbing is not just what he did, but how long he was able to operate without serious consequences. That wasn't an accident. It was a failure of systems that were supposed to protect people and question power. What finally pulled the story back into the light was not a confession, it was paperwork. Boring, unemotional, legally filed. Flight logs, court records, depositions given under oath. Documents that were never designed to tell a story but ended up revealing one anyway. These are what people now call the Epstein files. They don't accuse anyone, they don't make claims, they do something far more uncomfortable. They show patterns. The same names appearing repeatedly, the same aircraft routes, the same locations over and over again. For years, these documents were not hidden, they were public, but they were scattered, sealed, and buried inside legal systems that few people ever examined. What's unsettling is not that these files suddenly appeared, it's that they were always there and almost no one was paying attention. As the documents were examined more closely, something became impossible to ignore. Jeffrey Epstein did not move through society alone. He appeared again and again in the same circles around people with influence, wealth, and power. Political figures, business leaders, academics, royalty. Not accused, not charged, but repeatedly present. The documents don't say what conversations took place or what anyone knew. They only show proximity. And that proximity raises a deeply uncomfortable question. When someone appears this often in environments this powerful for this long, how did no one stop it? And why did accountability never follow access? At the center of all of this are people whose names rarely appear in headlines. Not powerful, not influential, often young, often unheard. For years, their stories existed only as footnotes inside legal documents. Statements, testimonies, accounts given quietly, sometimes years after the harm was done. They didn't have access, they didn't have protection, and when they spoke, very few people were listening. This story is often told through names and power, but its real weight lives here, with those who were never believed until the document spoke for them. So, why does this story keep returning years after it first came to light? It's not because of headlines or trending hashtags. It's because something was left unresolved. There were documents, there were testimonies, there were questions, but for many people, there were never clear answers. Trust was damaged not just in individuals but in institutions meant to investigate, protect, and explain. When powerful systems fall silent, public memory doesn't. This story resurfaces because it represents something larger, a fear that accountability depends on status, that justice moves differently when power is involved. Truth doesn't expire, sometimes it just waits. There's no dramatic conclusion to this story, no final revelation, no moment where everything makes sense. The documents exist, the questions remain, and many of the answers never arrive. Some people were investigated, some names were mentioned, and then the system moved on. But the silence didn't. Because when stories like this fade without clarity, it isn't closure that follows, it's responsibility. Ours to remember, to question, and to notice what happens when powerful truths are left unfinished. If you value calm, fact based stories that go beyond headlines, consider subscribing because some stories deserve more than just one watch.